Remember, the content on our show is for information only.
It is not intended to provide medical or other professional advice. Hello, and welcome to Placebo, the podcast where each week we look at a healthcare article and discuss it together. Is that what we're saying now?
Sure.
Okay. I'm Kaylin Richards, and this is my brother.
And I'm Logan Richards.
So today, I have a pretty recent article that I just saw a few days ago. It's published on NPR. Okay, so here's the article. Title is called, As Sleep Improves, So Does an Injured Brain.
Mm-hmm.
Catchy headline.
It doesn't sound particularly catchy.
It doesn't. So how would you summarize this article in a catchy way?
Okay, so there's a part of your brain that controls your asleep and awake cycle. And
what part is that?
The circadian rhythms part. It's the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
Oh, okay.
And that after you have a traumatic brain injury, a TBI, that cycle is thrown off, and they're using the...
Presumably because the whole brain is injured, including this area that regulates sleep. Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah.
I don't know. That's not really what they said in this article, though.
What I just read in the study was that they said, well, you have your normal sleep-wake cycle, and when your brain is injured, it's not normal. And then as you get better, the sleep-wake cycle gets back to normal.
That is what they said. They didn't say exactly why. They didn't say this area of the brain is damaged and then it recovers, I guess.
Wasn't. You said that. You put words in my mouth.
Oh, okay. You said suprachiasmatic nucleus.
You asked where the circadian rhythms were. That's where they are. I didn't say it was injured.
Okay.
I just said that the research said that as the sleep-wake cycles start to become more normal, then that suggests that the brain is also starting to heal.
Right, but what they, I think, kind of were not sure about is which is coming first, right? So they were studying one of the aspects that they talk about in this article is they studied people's like cognitive performance on tests of brain function.
Okay.
Right? I don't think they said what specific tests that they did. Cognitive tests. And they found that the people that, as they were able to sleep better and their brain was recovering, they did better on the cognitive test. So they said the brain is recovering and that's shown by they do better on the cognitive tests and then they also sleep better, or that they sleep better and so they do better on the cognitive tests and their brain is also recovering. Is that confusing?
Yeah.
Say that in a less confusing way.
So they're trying to figure out if sleep is making you better or if you're sleeping better because you're better.
Yes. Yeah. Because it all happens kind of in the same time frame and they can't really tell which is what is really happening. They hope to find whether an improvement in sleep patterns came before signs of brain recovery, but they found that they came at the same time, so they couldn't really tell what was leading what or if one was leading the other at all.
So what's the point of this article?
So the point of this article is that the researcher is saying that they believe that hospitals should be taking measures to help encourage good sleep in patients, regardless of whether it's the sleep that's helping them recover or it's the brain that's recovering, they can sleep better. If they can sleep better, theoretically, that should help the brain recover, is what their thought is, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
What does your hospital do to help people sleep better?
Well, I think there are a lot of things that we try to do and that probably all hospitals try to do.
Yeah.
Like things like...
I'll just reframe that question. What are some things that hospitals do to try and make patients sleep better?
Yeah, hospitals know that sleep is important for patients, but I think it's also known that hospitals are not very restful environments.
No one ever reports sleeping well in the hospital.
No. So, just to kind of summarize the problem, right, there are medical tests that need to be done throughout the night, and
you always see tests being done at like midnight, but there doesn't seem like they need to be done at midnight.
Well, maybe not all the time, but for someone that is very soon after a severe brain injury, maybe it is important that they be done right away, urgently.
Maybe.
Also, with someone with a acute brain injury, they're probably doing regular vital signs to monitor how they're doing and make sure that they're ready to intervene if something is changing right away. I think also just the nature of being in the hospital, there's a lot of people around. Some people just can't sleep with all the people around in general.
Yeah, that's true. People coming in to check on you all the time.
Right. There's alarms and buzzers and beepers and just a lot of noise. Even if you're not being specifically, no one's specifically coming to do anything to you, there's just noise, right? And even in the nighttime, it's not dark and quiet like you're used to.
No.
So I think hospitals try to do things like keeping the lights low. They call it batching care, where if, 3 or 4 things need to be done for this patient and it's midnight, they try and do it all at one go and not like right here and then 5 minutes later come back and do something else and then 20 minutes later come back and do something else and whatever. Other things that I know help are a lot of times people will be wanting to sleep in the daytime, and we try and discourage that because, at least to some extent, because if you sleep in the day, you don't sleep at night. And people in the hospital often get confused.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, confused on their sleep-wake cycle.
Uh-huh.
And they tend to start sleeping more and more in the day and less at night. And that's not very helpful for your recovery. So they try and, do things like get people to sit up in the bed or in the chair if they can and keep their blinds open during the day and, do things like that. And then turn the lights off at night and try and keep things as quiet as possible for people. I think that's kind of things that they try. The article that we have here also mentions medications to encourage sleep. I'm not sure about that because, there are different sorts of medications to make people sleep or appear to be sleeping. Mm-hmm. There are like sedative medicines.
Are you questioning whether the medicated sleep is worse or better than natural sleep?
I'm not a pharmacist.
You're not?
I'm not. But I do know that, like, for example, when people are sedated, they appear to be asleep, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not asleep, and they are not getting the rest like they are asleep. So I think there are medicines that,
Is that proven, or are you speculating that?
No, that's proven. That's been discussed. Like, for people that are in CCU, critical care, and are, for example, intubated, so they are on a vent and they're sedated. Uh-huh. So they look like they're asleep. But, really they're not experiencing sleep. And so that's been talked about, in training courses from a therapy perspective. People are not getting rest when they are sedated.
Yeah.
So if people can tolerate it, they actually encourage them to come off the sedation and be awake or be actually able to sleep, not sedated when they're on the vent.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I think there are medicines that actually help you to fall asleep, like sleep aids. Right. And that might be what they're mentioning versus actual sedative medicines, but that's not what's always used in a hospital setting.
Yeah.
What else do you want to talk about here?
Well, I think it's interesting that it seems like there's, especially from what I read a lot, it seems like there's this general consensus right now that sleep is very important, although we're not entirely sure why. Mm-hmm. But we know that it's important for almost everything.
I think there's been a lot of sleep research, and it's still... Are we exactly sure why we need to sleep? I think there are lots of ideas.
Yeah. Well, we're sort of, we did the episode on the lymphatic system, so that seems to have something to do with it.
That's one reason.
But pretty much every field has their own reason why you should be sleeping. Mm-hmm. Reading this article originally was making me think of, I read a lot of like training articles for running, and the trend right now is saying that instead of training more, you could improve your performance by getting better sleep, which is, it's common, it's not surprising, but it's interesting now that there's literally, articles on Runner's World saying like how you should not look at screens before 30 minutes before bedtime and go to sleep at this, trying to get...
I so don't follow these. I like to do my crossword puzzle on my phone and then go to bed.
Oh yeah, I don't follow the rules either. But I think you could literally take any field where you're trying to make something better, whether it be, exercise, you're trying to be a better runner, or health, you're trying to recover from an injury. It seems like sleep is so important. I think, but we also have this attitude in our country, at least, that sleep is annoying and in the way and takes up a third of your life for no reason.
Right. I think people feel frustrated that they have to sleep sometimes, although I like sleeping. It's very cozy.
But it is interesting that in my experience working in the hospital, no one reports good sleep.
Oh, no.
And you always hear about things like, oh, I had an MRI done at 2 a.m. last night, and then I couldn't get back to bed.
Well, I understand.
Obviously, we're not directing people's medical care, so if that's the way it needs to be. But it does seem like there should be, it seems like there's enough evidence that hospitals should be making it more of a priority to make sure that the patients that are there are getting the best sleep they possibly can.
I also see a link inside this article that talks about how lack of sleep over the long term also seems like it could be a contributing factor to developing Alzheimer's.
I wonder about that too, because you often hear about these people, I guess you hear about people that are, productivity gurus or whatever, these super hardworking people, and they only sleep 2 hours a night or 3 hours a night.
Seems very bad for you.
But they seem like these high energy, go kind of people.
Yeah.
But it just, when you read stuff like that too, you wonder, how is this person going to be in 30 years if they keep up this sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night thing?
Well, that seems a little bit manic to me, not very healthy to be only sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night, right?
I guess, but a lot of people do that kind of thing because I guess that comes back to the attitude that sleep is a waste of time.
Oh. Well, unfortunately, we are all humans, and humans do need to sleep, and it's not a waste of time.
I know.
So perhaps they would prefer to be a different species.
Well, I think what's interesting and counterintuitive about sleep is that people feel as though it's unproductive. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if we had a change in mindset that making sleep seem more productive would encourage people to sleep more, and then...
Well, I think preventing dementia seems to be a good
Well, yeah,
thing.
But that's too far off.
I think you're right. People have a hard time picturing the future or bad things like that happening to them.
But I have found it, honestly, I have found it motivating for me to try and sleep better and a little bit longer, thinking that I might be a better athlete or a better runner because I get this extra hour of sleep. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if other people would feel the same for whatever they wanted to be better at. Say it's your job or, your hobby.
Yeah, I wonder because the people like you're talking about that sleep very few hours per night.
They clearly want to be really good at their job.
Well, certainly. And I guess they're different than me, but there is no way I could be good at my job functioning on that level of sleep. If I have something, a really bad nights of sleep and I only get 3 hours or something, I feel terrible. I'm the worst at my job in that circumstance.
Right.
But I'm not adapted to it, I guess. But still, I definitely know I'm not thinking as clearly as I would normally when I had my normal amount of sleep.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because probably everybody's different. Probably there's various levels of the way that you react to sleep. But it does make me think of, if you took this class of people that see themselves as these highly productive, I only sleep 2 or 3 hours a night because I have so much to do and I do a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. What if you took those people instead, somehow got them to change their mind so that sleep was actually a productive activity for them. Mm-hmm. And then imagine, maybe it would be interesting to see what happens to their work when they start getting more sleep and how they feel and what they do.
Right.
And then also study them long term and see.
Because, perhaps you have more hours to work if you're sleeping less, but surely the quality can't be as good if you're well rested.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that research has been done.
I don't think so.
But it comes back to all this there's clearly this healthcare thing now that we need to focus on sleep in order to help people recover better. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if we need to go even further and start trying to make people sleep before they've developed Alzheimer's from 30 years of only sleeping 2 hours a night.
Among other factors, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten pretty far from the article, but that's okay. I like our discussion.
Sleep.
Yeah. One other thing I kind of thought of when reading this article is frequently when people are in the hospital with brain injuries, and I don't see a lot of people with TBIs, but more so with strokes or something, that
it's the BI part.
The brain injury part. They still had a brain injury. I agree that people often have a hard time sleeping and finding a regular routine again. Uh-huh. And sometimes that also will manifest in delirium, which is another problem that's commonly associated with being hospitalized, and I think lack of sleep too.
Oh yeah, that's what's it called? ICU delirium or something? That's like an actual diagnosis, right? Not just like people feeling like they're crazy. That's
it is. Well, delirium is a thing that happens in hospitals. It's a real thing,
right?
So where someone,
not just an adjective.
No, someone who's older or has maybe already compromised, like they might have some mild dementia or something like that, are at a higher risk for delirium. But anyone can develop it, especially people that are very ill. For example, someone with a severe brain injury, or people that are hospitalized for longer periods of time in like an ICU setting. And I think a big part of delirium is sleep, in that people are not able to sleep, and they lose their sleep-wake cycle like we've been talking about, and they can't sleep for long periods of time, and it's really hard to regain a healthy sleep-wake cycle when you're in the hospital. But often people that are delirious are not stable to be discharged from the hospital, so it's a really big problem again, I think.
Well, it just makes me wish I knew more about what hospitals were doing to ensure that patients are sleeping. You know, there's a lot of...
Well,
there's so much responsibility of the hospital to do, everything they can to make someone better. But there's so many things to think about. It does seem like sleep is not something hospitals are very good at doing at this point.
No, and for example, I'll sometimes go see a patient and it's, noon, say, and came into the hospital at 6 o'clock last night because they've had a stroke, say, and they've been in the ER all night and they've had a million tests done. And then they get up to their hospital floor in 2 a.m. and then they, barely sleep, and then they have a bunch of tests and other professionals coming to see them all morning long. And so, of course, someone's not going to do that well, when I see them, and they'll complain that they don't have any sleep. And I understand that, but also... we also have a lot of research about, for someone with a stroke, early is better with therapy. Right. You don't want to wait at all. You want to start right away. And everybody's discipline has that research.
Should they be sleeping, or should they be doing therapy as soon as possible?
Well, so probably both, but how do you balance it when they also have to get an MRI and an EKG? And
have you read that book called My Stroke of Insight?
Oh, I keep meaning to. No, I haven't.
I forget who the author is off the top of my head, but of course
Jill something.
She's given a TED Talk,
neurologist,
right?
Yeah.
So she had a stroke, but her interesting perspective is that she's also a neuroscientist, right? But I remember when I read the book that she kept talking about how much she slept when she was recovering.
Which
I think
is probably
after
good for her.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because she certainly, I don't know what she'd say, but I think that she portrays that she's made a mostly full recovery from her stroke.
She was able to give a TED Talk.
Yeah, she gave a TED Talk. She's back at work, But I just remember reading in the book that she was sleeping, these huge amounts per day. Like, definitely it was like more than 15 hours per day. I was like...
I wonder if she was really sleeping the whole time, or if she was doing what they say here, where you sleep for a few minutes and wake up and sleep for a few minutes and wake up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway.
But, again, that's interesting, because that's all that sleep time is time that you're not doing therapy. But maybe if you're doing therapy in those few hours you're awake and then sleeping the rest of the time, then clearly she was able to make, improvements.
Well, and doing this sort of, therapy is very exhausting, so I can understand why she would be so tired.
Again, interesting, though, because she seems to have made a full recovery, and part of the thing in her book was just constant sleep.
Which, again, is not something people are getting when they're in the hospital anyways.
Yeah. I think that was after she had been discharged.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that kind of will wrap up our discussion for today.
Okay.
What do you think, brother?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I want to know more about sleep. I think that's what that makes me...
We've already done... This will be our second episode about sleep.
Okay. Well, if you liked the episode, we will include the link in the episode description. That's new.
Oh, that's a good idea. We can remember to do that.
I did that on the last one.
Good job.
We'll include the link on the episode description so that you can head over to the article and read it yourself.
If you would like to give us feedback or share what you think about the show, you could go to our Facebook page and leave us a comment there, or you could email us at placebopodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to James Aiken for our music.
And thank you to you for listening. We will be back with a new episode.
Yep.
All right.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.